Today is day 7 of the June 93 10-day retreat at Springwater. It was really a very wonderful 2 days. Not needing to talk. A marvelous sense of freedom. And particularly the freedom to be and see and listen without needing to put it into words. I think it's very important that we do put into words what is seen and perceived when we communicate with each other, and it's important that we communicate with each other. Not just about superficial things, but about things of depth and importance. That we share what is seen, and for that we need to put it into words. And it comes often with an insight, or a seeing also brings words to express it, more or less adequately, never completely. But like everything else, it is amazing how mechanical this mind is. It makes everything into a routine. This is its function, to routinize things so that they run smoother with less effort. And so the need to put things into words can become a routine, can become almost like another chattering. Talking about chattering, I remember 2 days ago in a group meeting, and not only then, the question coming up, why is there so much chattering in the mind? And today, maybe the majority of questions were about trying to keep what is there, or to get back what one had, or to get something what one has not yet had. Trying, which is, of course, interwoven with thinking. Or the thinking produces the trying, and the trying body produces more thinking. And then wondering, just like wondering, why is there so much chattering? Why is there so much trying? When it becomes quite evident to the insightful mind that the trying is counterproductive to just being here. The memory comes up when we used to visit with my in-laws, Kyle's parents. And Ralph would misbehave at the table. Automatically, the mother would, the level of her conversation would increase and intensify. She was very much into a balanced, harmonious dinner. She'd worked hard for it. And some possible collapsing of this harmony through some child's misbehavior or what was perceived as misbehavior, brought up the level of chattering, to chatter over the embarrassment, to chatter it away. Maybe she's also trying to help us out as the parents, feeling parents really are responsible for their kids. They don't just seem to be doing much, so. Is that part of the chatter? Is there something embarrassing or not looked at, awkward or fearful, threatening, disorderly in the body-mind that is chattered over? We're asking the question, and the question will pop up on its own if there is discomfort with the chattering as well. Waking up in the middle of the chattering, pattering stream and wondering, not just, why do I always chatter in terms of, I wish I weren't? How could I stop it too? Is there something underneath it? Something that in a way doesn't want to be looked at and yet beckons to be looked at, and yet the fear of looking at it, having all kinds of assumptions, what it would lead to if I looked at what? What are the fears? What are our apprehensions? This morning, in talking about the impetus, the impulse to try not to chatter, to try to be quiet, try to touch again that marvelous spaciousness one may still remember, that state of no separation, division that one would like to bring back, or trying to become enlightened, to get to this place of wholeness that one reads, hears about. What's underneath the trying? There is discontent with what is, isn't there? Discomfort. Maybe a painful state, maybe a state which lacks energy, which lacks stimulation, which lacks fullness, or it lacks emptiness. The state is what it is, but thought interprets it, elaborates on it, and adds to the discomfort. Because that is something we can all be aware of, that it is never just the bare happening that causes us pain or discomfort, but the elaborations that the mind makes about it, that thought creates, the way it puts it into words and sentences and outcries or injunctions. So there is something new to react to with disapproval, discontent. But what is the state without elaboration, which I find myself in right now, trying to get out of it? Is that where the looking can set in the listening? not chattering away or trying away from an embarrassing or painful situation, but diving into it. These are just words. It may be different. It may be just growing so utterly quiet in its presence that it can begin to reveal itself. This state of what? Without elaboration, to see how words want to come and describe it, and then how those immediately elicit another response from the body. A disquieting or upsetting response. So can one discover the elaborations and sort of say, wait a minute, what is it really? Not read the newspapers about it, but be there on the scene. It's different. And there's lots to discover when we don't get lost in the description to ourselves about what has happened to us, or is happening to us, or should be happening to us. What is happening? What's going on? There's wanting of something different. Wanting of something remembered, wanting of something anticipated. But what's here? There hasn't been a chance to let it open up and unfold because of the wanting, the trying, the chattering. Because there's sort of an intrinsic rejection of something that feels uninteresting, uncomfortable, dark, gray, undifferentiated, like a cloud. Somebody said there's something like a cloud. Murkiness. What is it? Can the murkiness get the love of attention, the light of attention, the patience of listening? Like the truck, the birds, the breath, the murkiness. Usually giving it that spacious, timeless attention. By timeless attention I mean no impatience to get on with it, to get over it. No pressure. There may be thoughts sort of oozing out of it, like trickles of thought. One person this morning in such looking said, I'm afraid of losing my practice if I don't try to keep it up. And that's what is my life, my practice, whatever that is for someone. My spiritual practice, my spiritual self, or myself. Afraid of losing something. Afraid of having nothing to hold on to keep me afloat in this incredibly difficult, harsh life, daily life. What if I don't try? I could lose the last thing. That seems, that makes living worthwhile. And in asking, what is the practice? Was a pause. The sound of the cough, the traffic, the wind, the birds. Who can lose it? Who can take it away? We can die. All of us will. Some of us are dying right now. Then we'll be with that. Maybe completely, without escape. But right now, aliveness is there. It's pulsating throughout this organism, throughout the meadows and the woods, the ponds, the sky, the trees and leaves, the deer, the ants. In trying to hold on to something, a bit of aliveness is lost already. Maybe a lot. And very close to the fear of losing one's practice is losing one's identity, isn't it? We've talked a lot about identity. What I think I am, have been thinking since the beginning of thinking. What I am. What I would like to be, what I was, what I still can be. All thinking. And thinking about myself, I am. Something. Not just I am, but I'm something. I can think of myself in infinite ways and be something. And not realize that that something is thinking about myself. That's the deficiency of thought. Without insight, thought does not realize its constructions are made of itself. Doesn't realize the unreality of them. Insight has to reveal the thought nature of our self-images. And the tremendous holding power, the tremendous conviction power that this is me. As I live and breathe and act, what I think about, that this is me. And is there the fear that by just being with what is, without elaborating on it, just this, elaboration when it happens may be seen and not continued, and just being with what is, the discomfort, the murkiness, the cloud. Is there the fear lurking through thinking? I may not exist in this way. Which is true. Not thinking about ourselves, we don't exist in thinking about ourselves. Which is a tremendous relief. It's the relief of what we call self-consciousness falling off, dropping off. All of us suffer from self-consciousness, don't we? Thinking about ourselves the way we think maybe other people think about ourselves. The fear of making a fool of ourselves, thinking about that possibility, or reflecting upon it when I had said something, thinking I did make a fool of myself. Thinking, how could I ever be unself-conscious? And then wanting that. And yet, at a moment of entering into a cloudy murkiness, here, right now, this instant, accompanied by twittering birds, the fear of not being, of disintegrating, because I can't think about myself. I need to think about myself, because then I will exist and continue. In thought. But this body, which is a absolutely miraculous organization of what? Life. Continues. Breathing, digesting, oxygenizing, heart beating, eliminating, assimilating, or whatever all it's doing, immune system functioning. Without any of my adding any thinking to it. It does it on its own. It exists in deep, thoughtless, dreamless sleep. Not only does it exist, but when one wakes up from it, at first you know that feeling, don't you? You don't know where you are, what time it is. Those categories of thinking take some time to come back or to re-emerge. But there is, from such sleep, without thinking, without dreaming, with the superficial consciousness shot, gone, finished, at rest, one wakes up refurbished, regenerated. As though one had been at the source. And it needed no thinking to keep going in a very healthful way and to wake up feeling regenerated. And then the thinking about oneself kicks in again. Or does it? It doesn't have to. It does usually. It's the strongest habit that we have. Thinking about ourselves, about our problems, and how to fix them. Can we realize, or can there be a realization, because no one is doing it? There's no entity controlling and directing all of this. It's a marvelous, integrated life process manifesting in all of us. And in that process there can be a realization. Can there be the realization that all this me stuff, not said pejoratively, all the me material, the me network, with its memories, past experiences, ideas about what I am or should be, what I should do to become what I think I ought to be, that all of that is of thought and feeling and sensations accompanying it. A vast network for each one of us thinking of ourselves in the center of it, like the spider sitting in the center. No, the spider doesn't sit in the center of its net, does it? Not always. Often on a little guideline on the side. But there is a center to the net, and that's where we think we are. And we think this whole network spun not just over our lifetime, but over the lifetime of thinking humanity. Presents itself as me. My life, my consciousness, all webbed together, spun together out of thought and memory, with its possibilities of projecting a future out of remembered past. And all our efforts to be something, to remain what we are, to maintain it, or to change it into something better, are all in that webbed network of thoughts and ideas, with their accompanying sensations and emotions. Trying to get out of that net by spinning more pathways, more interconnections, more lines. I want to say here that I'm not condemning thought. Thought has immense usefulness and can aid in realization. We talked about it at the very beginning. Realizing something and putting it into words to express as accurately as possible the truth of what is realized, leaving alone the thought involved in building a building such as this, in renovating a kitchen, putting a retreat together, or whatever our daily work may be. Thought is indispensable in all of that practical life of ours. But with regard to thinking what I am, thinking about myself in positive and negative terms, about my future, my past, is all network. Of very limited, if any, use to realizing what we really are. Are we something outside of this network, beside it, in addition to it? And this is very often brought up in meetings too, how quickly an insight becomes another possession within the network. It becomes another thread or bunch of threads added. And then talked about or felt about or yearned about in network fashion. when we think about ourselves, the whole network comes into operation. The visible threads, the murky threads, the unseen threads, all in operation. The energy travels along that network, energizes it, and makes it feel alive. So, what is listening this moment? The sounds of birds, the sound of a voice, the breath, the almost inaudible movement of leaves, sensations throughout the body. I don't mean the words, the reality of the listening reality. Is that network? Before I name it, before I describe it or comment about it, of course I'm naming it and describing it, but that's just auxiliary. It's not the real thing. The real thing of wind or sweat is not a word. The real twittering of birds is not the word. We'll never know what it is, but there it is. Audible and not separate from breathing, talking, sweating, cooling. The body moving, the heart beating, the birds singing, roaring, breezing. Not knowing? Not knowing? Knowing is the network, and that has its reality as a network. But before knowing captures it, what is it? The question is a tricky one, because when we are asked what is it, knowing kicks in, doesn't it? To see that and to stay with the not knowing. At this moment of such listening, of such opening and being and sensing and there-ness, there's no thinking about myself. And therefore no self-consciousness, and therefore no fear of being nothing, of losing something, because everything is here in incredible splendor. I shouldn't say this because it's nothing graspable or producible, it's just there. And the mind that despaired of ever losing self-consciousness, the uncomfortable kind, that's what we want to lose. The other, thinking of ourselves as becoming someone brilliant or outstanding that we cling to. And yet it oppresses just as much as the downside of thinking about myself in negative ways. All of that needn't be there in the openness of listening, sensing, being, undividedly. And it is exposed for what it is. This self-conscious network. And also, to a large degree, self-unconscious network, because there are a lot of strands in there which for that which there is no awareness in the conscious mind. But in this openness of here-ness, now-ness, beingness, the wind and the birds and the heartbeat, one alive process, or no process, call it what you will, and that there is no unconscious. Everything is there, very simple, not complicated, very direct and immediate. Thought about myself coming up. It's the network. Energy sort of slipping in there. Thinking about oneself. And that associates with this. The whole thing is sort of potentially or actually lit up with energy about me and my relationships and the world. The world as I think of it and as I project it in thought. But an instant of free and open listening, and the energy doesn't travel into that. It's just here with everything that's alive. Unbothered by the doubts and fears and negativity and positivity and future and past. And the question which comes up, doesn't it? Well, why does the thing come back? Okay, there's an insight. Why does it all have to come back? Why ask such questions? Here it is. Involvement in thought about me. And unless there's a spark of attention, it'll continue thinking about me. How good, how bad, how hopeful, how hopeless. And then a moment of awakening again. Can it instantly be seen where we are? It takes a little time, just like I mentioned before, waking up out of a deep, dreamless, black sleep. Taking a moment to think, where am I? What's going on? What time is it? What am I supposed to do? And then, little by little, the network unfolds. But see, this is another question. Can there be a waking up in the network? Realizing where it's needed, the thinking? And yet not be totally stuck with it, stuck in the glue of it. Understand it and discover it more and more. And that's what we can do in dialoguing and talking and discussing, is understand more and more about the network. Discovering, sharing, listening to other people. And somebody sees something and has seen it, then it holds true for all of us at one time or another. It is all about the network. About this other thing, there's very little, there is no difference of opinion in that. Everything is just the way it is. Start interpreting it and we'll be of different points of view. But of course, our exploration of the conditioned network will be fruitful and helpful the more insight is brought to it. Not just talking about it and opinionating about it, although this is how we start out, but illuminating it with insight, which is not our possession, it happens alone, in groups. Not to have the conclusion that this is how things are. There will be forever in all eternity different points of view. And all we need to do is be accepting and tolerant of different points of view, which is fine and very necessary. But also wonder whether there is a shedding light or an understanding or seeing which has nothing to do with point of view. It just reveals what is, spaciously, openly, freely. Not of the network of me. Illuminating the network of me. We will end here for today.